This episode of the Buffalonian Podcast is brought to you by the Buffalonian division of the Castsource Podcast Network. The podcast network built by Buffalonians for Buffalonians, featuring the Wings with Blue Cheese podcast and the Buffalonian Podcast, with more shows on the way very soon. Find these shows wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or simply visit our website posted in the episode description. Now, without further ado, let's get into the Bills, Sabres, hot takes, and more of the Buffalonian Podcast. All right. Let's go. We are back with the Buffalonian Podcast. I'm Joe Callie, and as always, I'm joined by none other than Dom Lawson. Dom, coming off of a rough loss over across the pond, unfortunately. The Bills dropped to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They dropped 25-20. It's not a good look necessarily. We saw a lot of defensive players get injured, especially some big ones. But I guess, just general thoughts before we really get into it here. What are you thinking after last week? Is it an overreaction? A lot of people are overreacting, I think, but is it something that's warranted after that, with just the injuries we've seen?
Well, I think first things first. I think I don't need the Bills to ever play in London ever again. I don't need the Bills to play in Germany or anywhere in Europe. Mexico is on limits. They could go live in Mexico if they want to play in Mexico. If they want to play a game in Toronto, that's
no Toronto. Toronto is already done.
Listen, Western Hemisphere, same-ish timeline. Don't have to worry about all this travel crap. Talked about it last year with the after the Thanksgiving game being Thanksgiving out of Thanksgiving football with the Bills. Stressful time with the family. Kind of don't want to see my family and see me in that kind of mood. London games do not feel like waking up at 9:30 to be stressing over my favorite football team. But to go back to your point, I know we're going to get into the injuries. I think if you were looking at what happened to the Bills on Sunday in a realistic point of view, their chances to be the number one seed in the AFC have completely tanked. Having your second AFC loss to a team that potentially could be finished up there now in Jacksonville, and I think the defense with the injuries they sustained, I think their chances of being the number one seed in the AFC really went down the drain. I think their chances to win the AFC East dwindled a little bit. I think maybe you have to look at it from the perspective of Miami's dealing with injuries now of A-Chain being out, but maybe now it's a situation where we have to say, hey, they probably may have the second best odds to win the division now. Do I think that this has impacted their playoff chances? No. Do I think this has impacted their chances to win the playoffs? Super Bowl, excuse me. Yes, but I believe they have a chance to win the Super Bowl still. They still have a chance to win the Super Bowl. I just think the road to winning the Super Bowl is going to be a lot more difficult in the playoffs now because of the loss plus the injuries that were sustained. But listen, man, I believe the third Super Bowl run, they did not win the division, the Bills. The Miami Dolphins won the division, and the Miami Dolphins ended up losing to the Bills in the playoffs. So it could happen. But I think realistically, I think there's a high chance now that they're a wild card team, which is unfortunate to say, but I still think they have a chance to win the division. And so I think there's chances for that. I think the top seed in the AFC, just being a game behind Kansas City now, losing the tiebreaker to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I know you play Kansas City later in the year, but I think that might be a little more difficult to overcome.
No, I would agree with you.
That's early.
I just listen, I'm not pulling for, of course, I'd love to see them get the one seed. That hasn't been a reality for the past 4 seasons now. So, am I hoping? Am I wishing? Sure. Is it the end of the world if they don't? No. We've seen them go to the AFC Championship. We've seen them go into the divisional round. not being the 1 seed. And last year had existential circumstances which caused that, in my opinion. But I don't know. I'm not worried about that. Like you said, they can still win the Super Bowl. That 90s team did it when Miami won the division. You're absolutely right. Listen, but winning the division and winning, being the 1 seed, you're right. In a competitive AFC East with the Miami Dolphins, they now have a game up on you, right? You're behind. And I think at this point, yeah, the Dolphins schedule does get a little tougher as it goes into the season here, but you can't be dropping games like that. Jacksonville's just the kryptonite for
No,
the Bills.
Jacksonville's a good team. I mean, you gotta give them credit. I mean,
Right. Doug Peterson's a great coach. They had a great game plan. I mean, I'm not discounting that at all. I'm just saying, like, it was a game where you had opportunities and not many were capitalized on. So like that's the biggest frustration for me. And
yeah.
injuries. Like that's the thing. It's like you went out and put out probably the best game Josh Allen, we know his highest passer rating of his career against the Dolphins, right? And then you come out, and I get it, the travel, right? Everyone's saying the traveling. I do agree with that to some extent, but I mean, kind of a little bit of a jump off the cliff,
Listen, I think for me, it just comes down. There's multiple learning experiences for a bunch of people. I mean, the Bills, I think, have learned that if they ever have an international game, that this
Oh, the week before.
48-hour plan did not work. They came out incredibly flat.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see it, as you allude to before the pre-show.
Oh,
When we're
yeah.
talking about how Tennessee is doing the same travel schedule as the Bills, but the Ravens are, I believe, might already be in the
I think
air.
they're there. They left yesterday. They went early. In the Titans are coming
Yeah,
now.
so we're gonna
So
see. I
later.
guess that's a good litmus test to see travel. I think the NFL learned that. Yeah, I think it is a little bit of a competitive advantage for Jacksonville, who have been there for 2 weeks. And it's unfortunate. I think if the NFL were ever to do back-to-back international games for his team, they probably would have. They probably should have, because I believe there was a home game for Jacksonville is technically the home team for the Atlanta game. I think they probably, looking back, probably should have switched that and had their away game against the Bills first, and then their home game against Atlanta. So
Right.
maybe that's a
Home
better way
game
to
in
do
air
it. Where,
quotes, if you're listening.
yeah, maybe that's a better way for the NFL. But the most important thing that anyone could take away from this game is that the National Football League playoffs, the road to the Super Bowl, is not played in London.
No.
That is the most important thing to take away from this, is that the playoffs will not be in London. So
Yes.
we don't have to worry about this freaking travel again when it comes time to win the big thing. So as frustrating as this is, the
It's a
travel is
one-time
incredibly
deal. It's a one
frustrating.
and done. We're out of here.
And
So
part of it, I think, is the NFL shooting the Bills in the foot, and it's the part the Bills shot themselves in the foot with the travel. Both
yeah.
things can be incredibly true. The great thing
Right.
is the Bills never have to worry about this for the rest of this season, and
Yeah.
they won't have to worry about it when it comes playoff time. But talking
Right.
about the injuries that were sustained, obviously you lost Trey White last week to the torn Achilles. You lose
Yeah.
Daquan Jones, I believe, the first drive of the game because he got the third down stop.
Yeah, you didn't
Torres
even
Peck,
see him. Like, if you weren't
yeah,
paying attention that first drive, you wouldn't have noticed,
yeah, Torres Peck. So he's out for 3 months. They didn't rule him out for the year, but I don't know. We'll see. And then Matt Milano suffered a upper leg fracture. It seems like his knee ligaments are intact for now. I mean, they haven't announced anything that would say otherwise. So I feel like if his knee ligaments were screwed up, they would have announced it already. So, if you look at those 3 injuries, it seems to me, ranking them of importance, I think the Bills can overcome the Daquan injury with how really the depth of the D-line's been, getting Vaughn back. You're going to get Gregory Shaq Lawson back. I think Kingsley Jonathan had a really underrated game. Thought he was really solid in the snaps he got. AJ obviously had the big game. You still have Ed Oliver. You still have Jordan Phillips. You still have Tim Settle. You still now have Poona Ford, who was a starting caliber one tech for Seattle last year. He was a healthy scratch. I believe 3 of the 4 games. I think he's only played 1 game, if I'm not mistaken. So having
Yeah.
him to be, put him into the lineup for Daquan. Obviously, it's not equal. Daquan is a better player than Puna Ford, but listen, Puna Ford's no scrub. I think if Puna Ford was a guy that we literally just signed right now or trade
We'd
for
be
right now,
happy.
I think people would be a lot more excited than they are. So it's tough to lose Daquan. And then the corners, I think getting Benford back will help. I
Yep.
think maybe not being as man blitz. I know Elam's a man corner, but it just felt like him and Ridley was a mismatch. And
Yeah.
Dane
Very much so a mismatch. It felt
Jackson played
like
really well. It was good to see that Taryn seemed to be okay. So,
he had a lot to say
I
about the turf after the game too. Did you catch that clip?
yeah, not too happy about that, but
No. Did you see it
listen,
getting rolled out? Like the video the Bills posted? They put it on
yeah,
social
because
media
it
of
was
it being
grass.
rolled out. I'm like, it's the thickness of like a tarp. That's what it looks like. You know what I
Yeah, it
mean?
was.
Like it's crazy.
There was a grass pitch beneath the stadium, I think, or they
Cool
took the
soccer
grass pitch
term. You
out.
use the proper
Thank
English
you.
football term there.
But yeah, not getting Benford back, I think will help with that. Maybe getting a little changing up the scheme to help your corners. I think will help briefly before we say Milano's injury. I talk about Milano's absence. Kincaid being concussion protocol, and apparently Dawson Knox dealing with a wrist injury. I know we'll talk about the offense, but I feel like both those players have been. It's been a poor season, I think, for both those players. Maybe not so much Kincaid, but more Knox. We'll talk about that later. But
Mhm.
no player has suffered a concussion and come back within a week. I know Luke Musgrave did it, but he suffered his concussion on Thursday Night Football, and he played last night on Monday Night Football. So that's
He had
more
an
than a week and
extended
a
week.
half.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, that's something to monitor with Kincaid. So that he finished the game might be a good sign. I don't know. So that he most likely will probably be out this week, I would assume, if he has a concussion.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the NFL takes concussions pretty seriously, so I feel
yeah,
like
he's
Knox
probably
with a
out.
wrist injury has a better chance of. Did they go into specifics at all, or is it it's just
Nah,
literally
just a
wrist?
wrist injury, but
Yeah.
I would assume he suits
Yeah.
up.
I mean,
And
because
that's
if
worse.
Kincaid's not going to play, then you just have Quentin Morris, right?
Yeah, they would probably have Knox Morris and probably a little more Reggie Gilliam as a tight end.
Right. If they
Probably
had
more
to.
Reggie Gilliam. But yeah, so but talking back to Milano, he's the guy that they just can't replace one for one. He's the guy that really their scheme depended on. They're gonna have to change a lot of stuff. Dorian Williams had some flash plays, the pass breakup, a couple nice tackles, but he also had some really rough moments in space. So Terrell Dodson actually had a pretty solid game for
Yeah.
my expectations. Can he consistently do that? I don't know. So it's gonna be interesting who they choose to decide to play in that spot, and it's also going to be interesting to see. We talking about Balin Spector, who is in line to maybe be a starting linebacker.
Right. Coming
Is
back
he
from
is
the
he
injury.
is he a guy that now coming off IR, starting to practice? Is he a guy that's similar to the Terrell Bernard situation? Does Dodson Williams struggle enough the next couple of weeks in the Milano role where he comes off IR and it's kind of like, hey, here's your shot right now, and you're going to start right away in that spot. So I think that'll be interesting to look at. But the
Yeah.
Milano's the piece where it's like I don't know how they're going to absorb that, and that's why I think this defense drops from being a top elite defense to maybe just a good defense. But a good
Yeah.
defense is good enough to win Super Bowl. So
No, yeah, that's all you need really, and the defensive line's solid. You got to fill the void of Milano the best you can. You're not going to, but the best you can. And one thing I want to comment on before we get into the usual Dom 5 here. Um, did you see the videos of Diggs smashing the tablet that everyone started freaking out about?
yeah, I don't care.
I don't either. It's just everyone was like, "Oh, he's unhappy." No, it was just the interception play where he got the ball ripped out of his hand, and he said it was on him, and he was frustrated. Human being shows frustration. Unfortunately, cannot do that, or the
Was
media
it?
terms.
I thought it was. I mean, I might be wrong. I thought it was after the big pass completion from 48 yards. I might be wrong. I could be fully wrong.
Oh, see,
I
I
thought
thought
it
it
was
was.
later.
I thought it
I
was
thought it
when
was earlier in the game. I might
he
be
got the
wrong.
ball yanked like out of his hand on that deep interception.
Yeah, I don't know,
He
but
was frustrated about that because he said it was on him, but
Mhm.
still, it's not even we're even paying mind to it, but it's really
Yeah.
on the pay no mind list because it's just an athlete being an athlete. So, what do you say we get into the Dom 5? Because on a
Yes,
better note,
sir.
we have something good to focus on, which is the Sabres season starting. So
Yeah,
we can leave
Dom
the loss
5 and
behind
then
us.
yeah. So, no graphics this week, unfortunately. Our producer is out sick. Mooch, hopefully he feels better, which is why we're doing this online. But for the Dom 5, so the first thing I'll say is I believe it was a gutty effort from the defense.
Yeah,
Losing Daquan, out your two starting corners, losing probably your best player overall on the defense in Matt Milano. They really held strong. Obviously, had some big plays to strip sack by Epinesa at the end of the game, at the end of the first half, excuse me. And then I believe it was Ed Oliver who stripped Trevor Lawrence again when they were in field goal range. It was just a situation where I thought the Bills just kind of defense wore down, unfortunately, at the end of the game. They did get at least one more stop, but it was just kind of one stop too late
yeah,
situation, which is unfortunate. Didn't love the cover zero look. Micah Hyde's a good cover safety, so I don't. That was a little. He's also an ex nickel corner, so it wasn't. I just didn't like that in 3rd and 4. I didn't feel like they needed to bring the house. I just think they could have brought like one person
yeah.
and kind of just maybe they played man, but I thought that was poor. That was the one poor play call I thought McDermott had. I thought they blitzed a little too much. I think they over exaggerated maybe a little bit, and then obviously gutty effort from the defense. I will say about the defense is that I talked about it in the pregame on Friday. I'm betting on the Bills how athletic Trevor Lawrence is, and
You saw it.
the one poor thing, and also if ETN too, the Bills need to become a better tackling team.
Yeah.
That really it really. I hate Nash. My
It's a
one.
glaring fault. Like
We'll,
you
t-
could see right through it.
we'll talk about a certain player coming up, but so gutty from this defense. But they had so many opportunities to get Lawrence down on a sack,
Yep.
get ETN down. Just a little
Just
bit,
tackle.
a lot of missed tackles that I think were
Yeah.
really unfortunate. But going to the number 2 of the Dom 5, I'm all out of sorts because usually Mooch pulls up the graphic and I'm all, but whatever. Number 2, no league humbles you faster than the National Football League.
Right. We saw it last week in the opposing effect. Dolphins put up 70 points and
Yeah, I
then
mean,
they get humbled by the Bills.
it happens to everyone. It
Yeah.
feels like once you get high, a low hits, and I mean, you can make an argument that fantasy football is also like that. So, the NFL, man, it's a league that gives you the highest of highs, and then immediately follows with one of the lowest of lows. So,
Humbles
it's
both players, coaches, and fans all
yeah,
alike. So
it's how you respond to those highs and lows, those valleys. How do you respond as a team, as an organization? And well, the Bills have 4 years of a lot of evidence actually from the McDermott era of being able to do that successfully. So I have faith. Number 3, the sloppiness on offense must end.
yeah,
Um,
gotta dial it in.
I didn't. It's weird. So Allen got graded by PFF as a 91.5, which is an elite grade. I think it was the 3rd highest quarterback grade of the day, of the week, I should say. And he was positive. He was like 7th, I think, in EPA per play, total EPA, I should say. So it wasn't his fault. I didn't think it was. It was weird. He gets graded out elite. I didn't think it was an elite day from Allen. Like I thought there
He
was
put up a
some.
lot of yards. I mean, that was really it,
Well, I think he could have played. I think it was like a high B kind of game, but it just comes down to. I think the play calling was a little iffy. I think the offensive line was disappointing for me because this is a Jags team that I don't think is the most talented defensive line you've played.
Right.
So I think that was
Washington's is arguably more talented.
well, it is. James Cook had a really frustrating day. Obviously, had a couple drops. Gabe Davis had a pretty good day, but had that one drop that kind of killed the one drive. Dawson Knox has the one drop on 3rd down. No, it's a tough catch, but you got to make that catch. Diggs gets mossed on the big play that could have really swung the game. It was just a lot of penalties. I think
Yeah.
Saibo got called for 2 holdings. I think Dawkins got called for one. McGovern got called for one.
A lot of
I
penalties.
think there was an offensive pass interference, which was a suspect call, but that took a touchdown off the board, and then they immediately got it right back.
Yeah.
But it was just like, I feel like you got a pretty good game from Allen, and I think the play calling was poor from Dorsey. I also think, for whatever reason, the Bills playmakers, I just didn't think they had a good day in space. Like, I think they didn't break a lot of tackles. Credit to the Jags defense, but it was kind of like the Jazz kind of had similar opportunities. The Jazz skills players, it felt like consistently made the first Bills defender miss, and it felt like the opposite for the. I don't know if that was just they retired or whatever, or what that was, but it felt like Jags skills players were able to make the first Bills defender miss, and it felt like the Jags defenders one-on-one first defender was able to get the Bills skills position players to the ground. And then my one more thing on this offense is, Davis and Diggs had good games. They had to find out who the number 3 option is on this team. I
I
think,
know.
as much as I want it to be Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox, I really think it's Deontay Hardy. Like, this
I would
guy,
agree with that. Yeah.
I think you saw him cook that guy on the out route. I think he's been really good with the ball in his hands, especially even on
Screen
these deeper
passing
routes.
as well. Yeah.
I think he needs to start getting more playing time, because if you look at yards per route run, I believe he's tied for second on the team with Davis, I want to say, or something like that. So, and he's
Right.
at like 1.85, which is a pretty good number. So I think he needs to run more real routes, and be more of a weapon. And then also, I think they just need to use Kincaid a little more over the middle. But I will say this with Kincaid is, like, the stats show that, like, he runs. Everyone's talking about Sam Laporta and all that. Dalton Kincaid's average depth of route is higher than Sam Laporta. They're just not targeting him. So I don't know if
Yeah, they're
that's a
not
Josh
throwing the ball
thing,
his way.
or if I don't know what that is, but they're just not throwing him the ball. So I don't think it's more. I think that could be fixed up. But my number 4 thing, I wanted to avoid talking him there, because my number 4 thing is Knox is a no-show. 11 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown this season through 5 games, and we're paying this guy a $50 million contract. I mean,
Right.
I think it's fair to say that this guy has the worst contract on the team of guys that are healthy. Like, obviously the Trey contract with the injuries he suffered, and Von tearing his ACL, and that's a pretty big contract. For dudes that have been healthy, majority healthy, he is the worst contract on the team by a significant margin.
It stinks too, because I mean, like, he's shown promise before he got the contract. That was in Dable's system, so you don't know what's going on there. He dropped the big pass, like you mentioned. It's a tough catch, but he should have had it. I mean, I I don't know. It's kind of a bro moment at the end of the day, because you are paying him so much money. You're paying him top tight end in the NFL money. And unfortunately, it has not panned out. And I love Dawson Knox. I want nothing but the best for him. But at the same time, you got to start utilizing him more and making that contract worth it. And he's got to be reciprocating on his end too,
I just think, yeah, I mean, he has his most catches in the game is 3, his most yards in the game is
Yeah.
25, and he has 1 touchdown. It's his contract, he's just not producing straight up. And I don't know what they fully do with his contract. I don't know how they could get out of it, but I mean, he is having a brutal season with a capital B. And again, this is a guy that last year we were talking about how underutilized he was, and then he got on that run at the end of the year, and you're like, okay, here he comes. And this year, I don't know. I don't know what they do to help him. But my final of the Dom 5.
Final of the Dom 5.
Elam doesn't help himself. We talk about how McDermott preaches opportunity. There was an opportunity for Kaiir Elam to take over a starting spot, to show up, and he got cooked on multiple routes by Calvin Ridley. And Calvin Ridley, really good player. Like, there's no super shame in that,
Yes.
but it wasn't like it was tight coverage on some of them. Like, some of them, he just wasn't even on the TV screen. I thought on runs tackling, he was terrible.
Yeah.
Dane Jackson, who's a smaller guy, I think, than he is, looked like he was more willing to put his nose in it's just overall a horrendous day at the office for Kaiir Elam. And it just shows why he was. I mean, that performance right there show every Bills fan why he was a healthy scratch.
Right. I 100% agree with you. I mean, we've seen Benford play better. We've seen Dane Jackson play better. You and I didn't even have Elam on the list to start when we were first taking bets on what guy was going to start at the position, right? I said Jackson just off familiarity. You said Benford, and it ended up coming true. And Benford's a later round pick in the same draft, and he's been exponentially better, right? He's produced more. He tackles better. He covers better. Elam looked like a 12-year-old playing against his dad. Like, that's what it looked like out there, unfortunately. And yeah, you're right. Calvin Ridley is a great player. There's no question about it. He's one of the best wide receivers out there. And Jacksonville got him for that reason, to give them that extra edge as well, even though he didn't play last year because of the gambling stuff, right? But still, I wouldn't trust Elam to cover a telephone pole that's just sitting in the ground. You know what I mean? Like, I really wouldn't. Like, where the other guys, I know they could step in and kind of fill that void of Trey White rupturing his Achilles. Like, Elam, though, I think is your third string guy. You're right. He muffed on the opportunity to go out there and show what he's made of. Really muffed on it. And, he's been lackluster. I love giving guys the benefit of the doubt, right? But all last season, he had the opportunity as well with Trey White injured, and we didn't see anything exponentially crazy from him either. And Benford was injured all last season as well. So you really had an opportunity to solidify yourself, and he didn't, and he's continuing not to. So I wouldn't be expecting anything special from him, unfortunately.
And then, my not bonus take, but
a sixth of the Dom five.
Before we move on to the Sabres, I will say, special teams is a thing the Bills invest in, and it is pathetic that every time that I don't remember the last time they had a really great punt return. They had that one Damian Harris kickoff return, but the multiple unnecessary roughness on Tyler Medikevich is, you're on the team for one thing and you have a 15-yard penalty. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Just when the penalties came too when they were about to get off the field, finally, like, oh, we're stopping them. Nope,
yeah.
You get a penalty.
It just pushed them back and gave a struggling offense poor field position. The onside kick was brilliantly done by TB. Like, that was a great onside kick. That's exactly what you want. It's a little unfortunate because Gabe Davis, who's the outside man, is taught that, hey, like, you need to cut into the field to take out Evan Ingram, who was that guy who jumped. You need to take him out.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate because the onside kick was so good it bounced over his head.
And if Davis was on the other side of him,
but if it didn't bounce over his head, I think two things really. If Gabe Davis just kept running straight, I think he has a real chance to, like, get the ball, like, just in stride. Also, if the ball is actually a little bit lower, I think Gabe Davis has a real opportunity to knock the ball free. Like, it would have been in Evan Ingram's fingertips, and he would have had a chance to, like, put it. I mean, Gabe Davis, you don't want really him tackling, but he would have been able to hit Evan Ingram. I think it would have drawn the ball free, and you would have had a fumble situation. It's just kind of unfortunate how that a little bit played out.
Yeah, and then but look at T-Bass knows how to kick the onside.
That was a good onside kick. My final thing about the special teams is that was a brutal decision to field that punt at the end of the game. You cannot field that punt. If you go all out for a block, the only reason why I love Hardy, I just vouch for him, but the only reason why you're back there is because you don't want a team just pooch punting it over to like 20 yards down the field and then just waiting to down the ball and wasting the time off. You can't field that ball inside your 5. You have to let the ball hopefully there's potential where that could have on touchback. You muff it, which is terrible because you almost didn't even get your chance at offense, and then you kick it out of the 5. You lost 15 yards of field position when you potentially could have had it at the 20. And as I was alluding to with my family when the Jacks were punting, all they needed to do was be around midfield with the ball with 1 second left.
Yeah.
That's all. Ball snapped with 1 second left around midfield. That's all they needed to do. Because if they would have got there, they would have had a Hail Mary opportunity. Unfortunately, we can't have nice things. But no, that is my final thing.
You have a quarterback who can throw it 50-plus yards with the flick of a wrist. And, yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't do that. So,
fortunately. But Moving on.
I mean, it's a tough loss at the end of the day. It is, right? Technically, it's a home loss too because we're the home team. But at the end of the day, move on to the next week. Next man up mentality. The Bills are still going to play. They play the Giants. Dable comes back in prime time. That's going to be a great game to watch. We'll talk more about that and other games later this week on betting on the Bills. Looking forward to that. But we do have one thing also before we move to the Sabres. We did our little experiment like Roger Goodell did. I didn't drink Buffalo Pepsi last week. We said if the Bills lost, we'd have to go back to doing that. So every Friday now, I have to make myself a Buffalo Pepsi and drink it. And I also have to drink it because I took the Vikings as my mortal lock over the Chiefs. It almost happened. It almost did happen, but it did not. So Buffalo Pepsi Day on Friday. We're getting the juju back in the Bills. We're going for the dub there. But there's a team that's starting. And boy, oh boy, is it exciting. I cannot wait for this season to start. It's going to be fantastic to just be back in KeyBank. I went for a preseason game last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. Just being back in that environment, it was busy in there too. There's a lot going on. So without further ado, the Sabres, who do they play in their first game, Don? They play the Rangers, the New York Rangers, in their first game.
Yeah.
And they released their starting lines. So what do you say we break it down? Anything
Before
else
we
want to get to
before we break into the lines?
Okay, hang on. Let me cut the Saber dance. Okay, we don't want that droning underneath the whole time. There we go.
Yeah, that would be kind of annoying. The news of the Darlene extension dropped.
Yes.
God that they at least have one of their 2 extensions between either Power or him done.
Yeah, and he plugged our podcast too. He said Buffalonian in his speech.
It ends up being 8 years, $88 million. I think when you look at it blindly, $11 million seems a little high, but the cap is going to go up.
Yep.
So I think it's going to work out. The most important number is 8, which is 8 years.
8 years of the wrath of Rasmus. It sticks around.
Yeah.
So,
and he's going to be, I think that gets him through his 20s. So really taking his prime years under contract. It's also a situation he wasn't going to take a hometown discount. This wasn't going to be like an 8-year, $9 million contract.
No.
This is a situation where the Sabres bridged him, and the player has a lot of leverage once he shows up after getting bridged. So, this is in a situation where it was, well, I guess Tate didn't really got bridged, but Tate only had one. They got good on that contract, and then Cousins was coming off his ELC, so he wasn't bridged. So they were able to get those contracts really done before both of them really broke out. Darlene, unfortunately, is already broken out by the time you had to negotiate his contract, and again has all the leverage because of the bridge. But it's a good contract. It's a player that deserves to be the highest paid player on the team, and is a guy that I think broke out to be a top 5 defenseman in the entire National Hockey League. And I think this is a year where he's going to take another jump. Where I think this is a year where he could be a Norris finalist and potentially even win the Norris as the top defenseman in the entire league. So happy that 2-6 is in the blue and gold for the foreseeable future. And I think, just my one man's opinion, next year he will be donning the C.
Oh yeah, I listen. I think it'll be Darlene C, Tuck with an A. I don't know who else would have the A at that point. Maybe
Gergensons if he's still here, but
if Gerg's still here, he'd probably keep it. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. And Norris, he's my pick to win it. Honestly, he's my favorite. To have a guy like that who bleeds the community, as you like to say about me, to slice me open, I bleed the community. He wants to be here. He said his brother wants to move here. Like this is a guy you want around on your team who's been there through the worst of the worst, right? Who's been there for the horrible years. And now he's showing out and growing with a growing team. And he's proving his leadership on the defense. And he's still that absolutely nasty defenseman who's not afraid to just get rough and rowdy out on the ice. And I love it. I'm so happy he's here for 8 more years. It's going to be
Yeah,
exciting.
I just hope this is the year we finally get some superstar calls because he gets a lot of penalties, like weak penalty calls, and
Yeah,
I feel like if he was, respected a little bit more by the rest, he wouldn't. That's the one negative in the game. But
yeah,
listen, this guy is the best offensive defenseman on the team, and I think you could even make the case he's the best defensive defenseman on the team. Like
I
he's
would
the
agree
best
with that
two-way.
100%.
Like I think he's the best on both sides. I know we all love Samuelson, but I think sometimes he gets a little overvalued. He's a defensive defenseman, but I think Dahlin's just the best of both worlds. And yeah, I mean he's
If you didn't pay him and you ended up losing him, you would
well, they were
never.
never going to lose him because he's an RFA after his contract is up. But
Right.
no,
But what
they
I'm
can.
saying is you wouldn't be able to replace that, you know? It's like a
I
Milano
mean,
situation. Like,
they needed to get this done.
yeah.
I'm happy by the skin of their teeth they get it done. Happy that they were able to get this done. Happy that it's 8 years. But before we go into lines, what is our point projection for the Sabres this year? How many points do you think the Sabres are going to get? Last year, I think I projected them to get 84 points, and I
Yeah.
believe they got 93 and missed the playoffs by 1 point. So I would say
I have them going to the playoffs.
that they will be the second wild card team. I have enough. I believe enough in the development that they're going to make it. But I think they're going to
I,
get like 97, 98 points. I think it's going to be a stressful couple weeks in
yeah,
March.
I think it'll be a race, like you're saying, down to the, not 2% chance like last season, but we'll have a percentage, a good chunk. I'm hovering right around 98 points too. I mean, there's no question. You can't get 93 or lower or like last year because you didn't make it with that much. You can't drop 8 games in a row in November. That's my one word of advice to the Sabres. You can't lose 8 in a row in November because if you didn't, you would have made the playoffs last year. So, I'm with you though. I believe in the development. I believe in Granato. I believe in the whole system as a whole. I think they're going to make it. I really do.
Well, it also comes down to this as well. Tampa is without Vasilevsky for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
The Sabres need to take advantage of that and start off fast. Because Tampa is going to be coming in the second half of the year then with a healthy Vasilevsky. So the team is, I know, without Jack Quinn, but the Sabres are majority healthy. There's a lot of teams that may have injuries from the playoff runs and all that. Like, the Sabres need to start off faster this year and not have to worry about a hot second half. So I think that's the most important thing. But let's dive deep into these lines.
Yes, sir.
And also, when we talk about the lines, I think there's we'll talk about some questions after we talk about the lines of what determine how the season will go. But Jack Quinn is out on IR. They also just, I think they have announced that Matt Savoy is starting on IR, so that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, you had the top line of Skinner, Thompson, Tuck. That was
Not
one of the
moving.
best.
It's the same.
Yeah, one of the best top lines in hockey. It was interesting if they were going to keep Benson there, but I think that's just such a known quantity, Joe, is that this how good they were, and I don't think you want to break that up.
No, you can't break it up. That trio last year was arguably why you had such a good opportunity to make the run. Like when they were all on the ice together, they were firing on all cylinders. The Pistons were pumping. It was just, that's how you have to have it. And we're seeing different lines though as we go through. I mean, if you're watching on video, you're seeing the graphic we currently have up. Skinner, Thompson, Tuck, like Dom said on the first line. Peterka, Cousins, Olofsson. The kid line, I mean, is no more because Jack Quinn's ruled out. So, I mean, that's kind of unfortunately where that ends up. But Benson made the third line with Middlestad as the center and Greenway as well. So, like, what are your thoughts on that, where Benson ended up before we continue?
Well, I'll say this. With the second line, I think it's nice to see Cousins and Peterka together. They had good chemistry last year. We'll see if Olofsson, if they could carry him. Obviously, I don't think that the Sabres felt comfortable putting Middlestad and Olofsson back together because they did not have good results last year. So I think they're going to try to have Cousins to see that. Greenway and Middlestad will see the chemistry they could develop with Benson. It looked pretty decent the last preseason game. With him making the team, I think it's a shock at first because I think there might have been other prospects like Rosine or Kulik that you thought were Savoy is on IR, so not much him, but I don't think anyone expected really Benson to make the team. But credit to the Sabres for rewarding a hot player. Then obviously the last line of Gergensons, Krebs, Oposto is going to be your shutdown line. They had good chemistry, good defensive results last year. But talking about the forward group, I
Mm-hmm.
think these are the questions. Again, we don't know the answer to these questions. Every year you have questions. You don't know the answer until after 82 games. And after 82 games, when you look back at these questions, if they were answered in a positive way to the Sabres, that means they probably had a good season. If it's a bad result, a negative towards the Sabres, it probably meant their season did not go the way as planned. But I think the questions have to be asked are, does the top line continue to cook?
Mm-hmm.
Does JJ Peterka build on his world championship, run? Does Casey Middlestat build on his second half run? Because it's similar to, it's very similar to Darlene last year. Of he had a very good
Right.
second half, but he didn't have a full year. What to make of Payne Krebs at the end of the season? Because it's kind of make or break. It feels like if all the prospects coming up. What do they get from Zach Benson? Does Jordan Greenway bounce back? He had a up and down run. And I think the biggest question that will be asked at the end of right now that we'll know the answer to at the end of the year, and will probably have the biggest determination of the Sabres forward group is, did they do enough was it smart for the Sabres to just simply run it back with the forward group and not add an external player once Jack Kuhn was ruled out with the Achilles? They kept Olofsson. Olofsson now is playing. This was a guy that was the 13th forward, a healthy scratch in the stretch run. Granato obviously doesn't trust him.
Yeah.
Was it smart to be like, oh, we're just going to replace Kuhn with Olofsson? Or was it a situation we're going to look back at and be, I'm not saying Patrick Kane. This is not like an in for Patrick Kane at all.
Everyone listening knows how
But
Dom and I
I'm
feel
making
about Patrick Kane.
I'm making sure that's known. But is it a situation where should they have went after Thomas Tatar? Should they have went after more of a veteran middle six forward? Is that a situation where them not going after one of those guys is going to cost the team? Because this team forward wise is weak defensively, and it
Yeah.
looked weak in the preseason. And it's the preseason, but they didn't add any real defense to the forward group. So I guess we're just going to see the high event thing, which I'm not going to complain about because I love high event hockey. But I
Yeah.
don't
I
know how
mean, it
much
makes it more fun to watch, but you're right. There's a sense
that
of
lead
like
the
this.
wins.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Sabres are known, this Granato regime is known for that high energy, high flying offense. And defense does go by the wayside a little bit on that. So you need to win games, like you said, at the end of the day. And we're going to have to see if that was a good decision or not. I'm going to be honest with you.
We don't know, but we don't know. And it looks like it's going to be, it's going to be interesting. Especially
That's
because
all we can say. We got to watch a game of
we don't know.
like
We don't know, but
regular season hockey.
I would say from what we know from Victor Olofsson is that counting on him to be a huge impact player is a stretch, and counting on an 18-year-old Zach Benson to be in your starting lineup seems to be an interesting move. That looks, it's correct right now, but again, at the end of the year, we'll be like,
Shouldn't have done that.
see. It's gonna be.
Yeah.
Listen, I think the forward group is going to be the strength of this team, and I think it's going to be real interesting which players we're going to be hating at the end of the year and which players we're going to be loving.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't have put it better myself because Middlestat last year despised him at the beginning of the season, right? At the end of the season, though, he's putting it together. He's playing great. I was like, this is the Middlestat you want to see all year round. If he continues to play like that as the third line center, come on, that's depth right there. We have a line that's functioning. Like, that would be fantastic. It's if they fall on their face that we're going to be like, okay, yeah, should have gone after a vet. You know what I mean? All that stuff.
Yeah,
so
and we're gonna see. I mean, listen,
yeah,
it's unanswerable questions right now. We don't know what's gonna happen in the future. It's not like we have a time machine, so we're gonna know by April. In 6 months we will know the answer to those questions. But looking at the defense pairings, they have Rasmus Dahlin back with Matthias Samuelsson kind of as the top pair.
Yeah.
Which is solid. Owen Powers back with Yoki Haru. And then obviously they put Clifton and Johnson together actually, but and then the healthy scratches, Bryson. I should mention the healthy scratch offensively for the Sabres is Tyson Yost. I did not say that, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yesterday,
Bryson.
I will disclaim these graphics were made yesterday, and this was the most up to date information I had.
It's
so.
all right. It's all good. We still love the show. But Bryson making over the team over Stillman, I don't love that. At the end of the day, it's probably not the biggest deal to complain about that, but I think that's kind of annoying. I like the pairs. Darlene and Samuelson have good chemistry. Power and Yoki have chemistry. I think Eric Johnson and Connor Clifton will be a really good third pair.
Yeah.
And really improve the depth of the team.
Yeah, we were struggling with that last year with like Jacob Bryson and Labushkin.
You still
like,
have
you know
Ryan
what I mean?
Johnson. You still have Stillman. You still have Clegg back in Rochester too. So you still have three. I think I'm not gonna say. No, like those guys could play bottom pair minutes.
Yeah, no,
if they need to.
They can fit into the scheme if you need them to, if it comes down to it.
So the unanswerable questions, as with the forward group, is simple. Does Owen Power take the next step in the sophomore year? We saw Mo Sider really have a down year, his second year after an elite first year. Does Owen Power take that jump? I think he struggled a little bit in the D zone, but I think with the experience he had last year, I think he's going to be really much improved, in my opinions. But again, we have to wait and see with that. And then another big thing was it a good decision to stay with Yoki Haru? Because I was pretty much out. I'm still pretty much out. I just don't, I'm not a fan of his game, and I don't think he's very good. But was that a mistake? And then the Bills. The Bills. I do this every podcast,
every week.
Take a
Sometimes
shot or something. Take a shot at Buffalo Pepsi. But the Bills obviously added quantity to their defenses. Like I think Eric Johnson and Connor Clifton would be good in the third pair, and adding Ryan Johnson to your organization as well. With more of the Yoki Haru presence, was it a mistake for them not to add a significant, like a top four piece to pair with Power, instead of just adding the two bottom pair defenses? We'll see. And then I guess my fourth question will be, I think the X factor is Ryan Johnson, who's currently in the AHL. Injuries are going to have. I have another question on this, but the injuries are going to happen. Does he make an impact on this team this year? And is this a situation where, kind of like Matthias Samuelson a couple years ago, where injuries happen, he comes up and plays, and he plays himself into the lineup where you can't, when the guy comes back from health getting injured, he can't find himself back in. I think that will be interesting. And then my final thing is this: is this the year Matthias Samuelson plays 82 games majority of the season? Every year he plays like 50 games and is banged up, bleeding, leaking oil to the finish line. Is this the year? I know it's kind of like the style of play he plays, but is this the year where he stays healthy? Because they really need him to, because again, I talked about it. Ryan Johnson, even Bryson, Riley Stillman, Cal Clegg, they can play bottom pair minutes and stretches. But if you lose Samuelson, I don't want to see Eric Johnson playing top 4 minutes. I don't want to see Jacob Bryson playing top 4 minutes. Like, that's where they get in trouble. They really need the big three of Power, Darlene, and Samuelson to stay healthy throughout. I trust Power and Darlene to do that. We have not seen it from Samuelson in his career, and they need him to stay healthy.
Right. No, I agree with you. It's just, again, I think we just have to say it's going to be interesting, because you're right. We don't have the time machine. We don't know what's going to happen, right? I do like the pairings. I think it's a lot more depth than we had last year, like we talked about. Listen, it's going to be a wait and see kind of a game. Am I hoping all that you're saying is absolutely true? Absolutely. And do I know? No, I have no idea. So that's the thing with like younger teams like this, I think. I mean,
they're the youngest team in the NHL at 25.5, I think.
Right. I mean, it's the unknown. You know what I mean? Like with these guys, right? These two new bottom pair, they could work fantastically together, or they could, it might not. Like, we have no idea. We've never seen them in regular season action before. So it's all waiting game, truthfully. And then it's calling audibles and figuring it out. That's truthfully what it's going to be. And listen, would I like to have no audibles be called and no injuries happen? Absolutely, I would. Is that realistic? No, it's not realistic at all. Like me saying 2 years ago that the Sabres are making a run to the Cup. So we're going to stay away from that. Do I think they make a playoff push? Sure. No, not making a run to the Cup. I have the power play and penalty kill lines too, if you want to go through those.
Now we'll just do goalies. I think we'll wait and see with the power play and penalty kill after the first couple of games. We'll talk about them
because then they're more established. But here are the goalies.
Yeah, we have some statistical stuff to talk about, I guess. Yeah, the goalies though. Obviously, Levi is the undisputed number one.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron, Luukkonen are 2 and 3. It's gonna be interesting, Joe. I think on Thursday, we'll see which one of these two goals between Cameron and Luukkonen, which one is scratched. And which one will serve as the backup. I don't know if they're gonna, move that around. Is Levi gonna have opportunities where he's gonna have the night off? I don't know.
Who's your pick right now? Like if you had to pick one, who's your pick
for 2?
Yeah, who's goalie 2?
If I would have only kept 2, I would have kept Eric Comrie.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I think Luukkonen's the scratch, easy.
I think he'll get scratched, but I don't know. Maybe it's Comrie.
No idea. We haven't seen it.
That's something that we'll know in 2 days.
This is full on preseason, unfortunately.
But I think, listen, I love Levi. I think Levi might be the best young goalie in hockey if he plays well. So in Levi, we trust. I think my take has always been pretty straight on that I think it was a mistake to not add a significant backup piece.
Yeah.
A veteran backup that can play 35 games, 40 games. I think not having that stability behind a young goaltender, I think was a mistake. And I don't know.
It could cause a pressure collapse there because it's all on him, really.
Yeah, I don't know what the options were. I'm not in the trade talks. I'm not in who wanted to come here, who didn't want to come here in the free agents or whatever. But I think there is an opportunity to upgrade that backup position that was not, and I think that could end up haunting them. But listen, those talking about answer questions. Is Levi the guy? Right? Is Levi the guy right now, I should say. Is he the guy right now? What to make of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen? Like, is he going to be a guy that becomes more consistent, or is he going to be inconsistent? Is Eric Comrie bounce back from an injury-riddled season? And again, just $1 million question. They did not touch the goalies. They kept the 3 goalies that they had at the end of last year. Obviously, they had 4 if Anderson retiring, but they did not make
the same lineup since the end of last year.
They did not make a single change with the goalies, and the goalies was one of the weaker parts of the teams last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, is this a year where they just need average goaltending from the 3 of them?
Mm-hmm.
If they get above average goaltending from Levi and then average goaltending from Comrie or Luukkonen, I think everyone will sign up for that.
Yeah.
Do they get it this year? And are we going to be talking about in April how Levi actually had a really good season, but the 30, 40 games that he didn't play that were given to Comrie Luukkonen were a mixed bag, and is the reason why we are sitting on our couches for another season. Listen.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Listen, I sound incredibly pessimistic and negative.
It doesn't though. You're being real. Like that's
I'm trying to be real.
Day, that's what it is.
It is incredibly hard for me to be very optimistic because the last time the Sabres were in the playoffs, my age was in single digits. I am now 21.
Yeah.
So let's put it this way. And those last couple playoff runs, they lost in the first round. And I was like, we were like 5 the last time they were actually.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
When they were Stanley Cup contenders, we were like 5. So it's been like 15 plus years. It's a little hard. For the Bills, a lot of people want to be really down on them. It's very easy for me to be optimistic about the Bills because the Bills have multiple years in a row of a proven track record of being consistent and being good.
Yeah, over 10 wins a season, making it into the playoffs. Yes.
The Sabres have not. It's a simple fact. The Sabres have had a very good second half 2 years ago, a very exceeded expectations last year. it's going in the right direction. My
Right.
frustration with the team is simple. The team has rough edges on their team
Yeah.
that did not need them to go out and buy an $100,000 disc sander or whatever to sand off to make it smooth. No, all they needed was like a freaking $5 piece of sandpaper and they were going to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
And they didn't buy the $5 thing of sandpaper, they did nothing. So I think that's my frustration with the team is that you look at Olsen being in the lineup, that's a hole. You look at Yoki Haru being in the top 4, that to me is a hole. You look at kind of the unknown with the goalie, that's a hole. And those holes, I don't believe that they're just, to me, in my opinion, it doesn't seem that would have been that hard for them to fix this offseason, or at least make it, put some glue in it or sand it off a little bit. With the Bills, it's like the Bills have holes. You can see the holes on the Bills roster, but the thing with the Bills is that they surround those holes with such smooth edges that when you put your hands on it, you never feel the rough edges. You just feel
No,
the
you don't get a
smooth.
splinter at all. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just smooth as could be. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. They did nothing. I mean, it's like they're scratching away at it with their fingernail at this point. Like that's all they're doing.
And we'll see.
If
I think in my heart of hearts, I believe it will work out because I believe in Devin Levi. I
Do you believe in
believe,
miracles?
yeah. I believe in the top half of this roster. I believe in Devin Levi, and I believe in the veterans that are in the middle of the roster. I just don't believe in like the roster spots, the back half of the roster spot, like the last couple roster spots. I think could have been improved on to be better. But I'm excited, man. I mean, as much as it's weird to say of like being real and trying, I'm trying to like not get hurt again with the Sabres. So I'm trying to like lower the
expect. Here's the thing. Okay, I'm gonna quote a movie here. I'm gonna see if you get it. Expect disappointment, and you'll never be disappointed.
I know that quote. You're gonna have to remind me of the movie.
Spider-Man: No Way Home.
See, I should have known that. That was poor
you
on
should
my
have.
end.
You should have known that.
No,
I mean, you're not expecting disappointment, but you're not lowering expectations. You're setting expectations sub what the hype is a little bit, so you're not just.
I would agree with that. I think
down.
that's more like what we're doing. I think
Yes.
there's so much hype, and it seems like
set a small goal first and then exceed it
yes.
and be happy, like be crazy about it. Like that's what we're doing. Because I'm not
like for me, it's this. It's this. I would like the Sabres in the first 41 games to be at a 100-point pace.
Yeah.
Like if the Sabres show me in the first half that they are at a 105-point pace, which is a playoff pace, first 41 games is half the season, then I'll go all in on the hype. I'll go all in. But if they show me that they're at like a 90-point pace, it's like, okay, you got to pick it up. They've been able to do that, but it's like, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a situation like Ottawa last year where Ottawa was so hyped up and they just fell like flat on their face.
Yeah, completely flat. Yeah, I agree with you. It's better to set realistic expectations and then be subverted. Like that's where I'm at as well.
But
so
listen, man, I'm excited that we have hockey back.
Yeah.
This is
Buffalo's a hockey city first. Remember that.
Yeah, we had a lot of questions. Listen, talked about the questions this year. We had a lot of questions last year. And I'll say this, last year's questions were a lot harder to answer than this year's questions.
Yeah.
Like last year's questions was, oh my gosh, is Tage a one-year wonder? Is Cousins going to actually have a breakout season? Is Dahlin a second half wonder? You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of questions. Is Skinner going to fall on his face after having a good season? Is Tuck really that guy that they got? Like there was a lot of questions last year that had been answered very positively. There's also going to be all the questions we said. There's probably going to be a mix. Like there's going to be some that like aren't going to hit. There's going to be some that
unfortunately do hit. I can tell you this: you probably are going to be wishing, like you said, that we did get a veteran somewhere along the line.
This is what I say to make it more positive at the end of the day. I believe that yes, those questions that we asked, some of them will be wrong. Some of them will be negative. At the end of the day, we'll get a negative answer. Some of them will be positive. I believe at the end of the day, there will be more positive responses to those questions than negative responses to those questions. And that is why we will be at KeyBank Center for an actual playoff series come April. Mic drop.
There we go. Don't actually do it. The listeners might veer off the road with that loud of a noise. But if you're viewing, you can see he muted himself. I mean, I guess I'll leave you with this. We're all Buffalonians, Bills fans, Sabres fans. The blood, the 716 speaks through us, through our actions. The 716 proclaims itself and what is real. And today we are here to acknowledge what Buffalo has proclaimed. You know what that's from? That's another quote.
Is it really?
It's a Jedi knighting ceremony, but I switched the words around. Because we're all Buffalonians.
Like, I mean, we are nerds, but people are going to think we're really nerdy after that one.
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Unfortunately, had to show that a little bit though. But I listen. I'm with you. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a hell of a season. I cannot wait. We're gonna be at KeyBank next Tuesday for Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm. Just think when we pod next week, we
go right from there to
they play Thursday and Saturday. We'll have games to talk, real games to talk about. It has been, what, 6 months?
6 months, yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, can't wait. But that's going to do it. The Buffalo Podcast. I'm Joe Callie, and as always, I'm joined by none other than Dom Loss. And Dom, how do you always end these, buddy?
Go Bills, baby, and go Sabres.
Go Bills. Go Sabres.